Fishing the DMV has big plans for the future, but to get there, I need your help. For $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a jackhammer chatterbait, all weekend warriors will receive 5% off all of their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits. And we have a special announcement. We have a new sponsor of the Patreon program, Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll receive 10% off your orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community. You'll be in the running for weekly Patreon giveaways, our monthly photo contest that we do every single month, and of course, members only content and so much more. If you would like to help Fishing the DMV grow bigger and better every single month, to be part of a fantastic community that represents Virginia, Maryland, and the surrounding area, please check out the link down below. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Fishing the DMV. I'm your host, Thomas Ahrens. And so I had the opportunity to get these lovely gentlemen on, Evan and Carl of the Chesapeake Reel Masters Tournament Trail. Guys, thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure
to be here.
How did all this get started? Like, how did you decide, like, I want to form a tournament trail and deal with all that crap as well as try to go fishing?
I couldn't have framed that question any better. I guess it's good that you don't know what you don't know. You know, you just don't know, but you got the desire, so you figure it out as you go. I met Evan last year. We fished a trail all summer long. I mean, we started in March. It was 28 degrees the first tournament, and we fished all through the summer and basically into the fall.
Yeah.
And we were fishing on the Eastern Shore primarily. We came over here, we fished on the western side a little bit, but we went over, and most of the end of the season was on the Eastern Shore. So you had to deal with the summer traffic going over the bridge. I mean, getting there wasn't the problem. It was coming back was just a parking lot on 50. So yeah, it was that. And then the fishing, the quality of fishing wasn't that good. I mean, you were there catching 10, 12-inch fish. I mean, occasionally you get a nice one. But some of these places, I mean, it was just, I had no experience with it. And I got my butt handed to me. So, running into Evan out there, we decided that, you know what, instead of running all over Maryland and Pennsylvania and Delaware and Virginia and everywhere else, why don't we I wish they would just fish right here in Maryland. We're passing some of the best fisheries in the country. I mean, the Potomac, they have a lot of MLF events. You know, Upper Bay had the Classic. They have MLF events up there too, Elite Series events. So they're top-notch fisheries. Why aren't we fishing them more? So we kind of came up with the genesis of we're going to fish the best bodies of water, centrally located in Maryland, as much as we could all year long, and try to make a tournament trail out of it. Because it's the Upper Bay. I love the Upper Bay. The Potomac, I love the Potomac. I'm a tidal fisherman. You get me out on the reservoir, I struggle. I struggle. Yeah. But you get me out on the tidal body of water, I love it. I can fish out there all day, and it changes all the time. So that was sort of the genesis of how Chesapeake Reel Masters came to be.
Now, is it just strictly largemouth bass, or do you do side pots for snakehead or speck trouts or things like that?
You know, we might have to put that on a poll and put it to the anglers on the Facebook page.
Yeah, that's
we want to do a side pot.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, go ahead, Evan.
No, it's a great idea. And I mean, and the thing is, in our Facebook group, everything that we do is for the anglers. It's all about growing the sport. We put everything to a poll. You know, what do you all want entry fees to be? And then we pull that out. You know, if we were to do this, you know, I know Scylla Johnson, who was also on the show, man, I mean, she's the queen of snakeheads. So I'm sure she would love that if we had, a side pot for snakeheads. Not against it, but we would just, vote on it as a club. So I appreciate that recommendation.
It's just an interesting thing because I'm seeing more and more clubs do things like that. And because I think in 5 to 10 years, they're going to have some kind of stamp or protection for snakehead because I think the government's losing way too much money with it. People love fishing for them. They really do.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm not sure if the regulation is still in place where you're supposed to remove them from the fishery or not, but I mean, there are clubs now that are snakehead clubs strictly, and they're catching and releasing these dragons. So
yeah, correct. Basically, if you transport them, they have to be dead, but you can catch and release. NVK. I've stuck with acronyms. I'll put the whole club in the episode description. But I think it's NVKE, the sister kind of club to NVKB. They do snakehead tournaments. I had a couple of their winners on last year, and it's a cool idea. It's a really neat concept because when you deal with tidal, there are so many, and the Chesapeake for that matter, there's so many different species you can catch. And before we get onto the bass stuff, really, like, what is your experience with that brackish saltwater kayak fishing?
I know I don't like salt water. I don't want it on my reels. I don't want it on my trolling motor. I know that's problems if you don't wash that stuff off. So I try to stay out of the salty water. I'm a freshwater guy. I don't even like going out so far where I can't even see land. I guys go deep, deep out there past the horizon. That's not me. I'm inshore freshwater.
So I'm
go for it, Evan.
I'm a little different. I grew up in Chesapeake Beach, Maryland, and all I knew was saltwater fishing. Fishing for rockfish, charter trips with my dad. That's where I cut my teeth as a young angler, if you will. And I mean, I love it to this day. Those are some of my best memories. But when it comes to competing, to me, that's where black bass shine. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I get hooked up on a striper, or, if I catch a channel cat in the Potomac, I'm not mad at it. But at the end of the day, it's the largemouth, the smallmouth. That's what I live for.
When did you make the switch then? I mean, you said you grew up fishing saltwater. When did you really get hooked with the freshwater bug, so to speak?
That's a great question. So it's actually fairly, it's a heavy story. But after I graduated from UMD College Park, I kind of was on a hiatus while I was in college from fishing because I didn't have a car, and College Park, Maryland is nowhere near. I guess there's Lake Artemisia, but at the time there was nowhere for me to fish. So I started following different YouTubers. That's what it was for me. That's when the switch. I started following guys like Greg Blanchard, Christine Fisher, Russ Snyders, right? Is it Justin Largan? I believe, right? He won the Potomac not too long ago. But what happened was I had a mentor while I was in college, and he asked me if I ever did catch and release. I've always done catch and cook. So I was like, what is catch and release? You would see, bass fishing tournaments, on TV and every once in a while growing up, but I had no idea how they actually worked. I wasn't into it as much. I was a competitive tennis player, so that's where my focus was, high school, college. But he invited me to go out. We fished what is it called? It's Merkel Wildlife Sanctuary. I'm not sure if I should drop that or not. But man, it's loaded with some great ponds. But he took me there, and I got hooked up on a frog bite.
Oh, and that's a great way to get hooked.
He was like, hey, listen. He was like, he taught me how to cast a bait caster. Somehow I naturally got it. I backlashed a couple times, but it was braid and it was easy to get out. So he was like, you can't really get snagged on this. You're not going to get hung up. Just cast along the edges. I saw something prehistoric pop out of the water, and it just swallowed my frog. I hooked into it, and unfortunately, I saw it at the bank, and somehow it got off.
Oh my!
So it was probably one of the weakest hook sets ever. I'm not really proud of it, but it was that moment when I knew that I needed to make the change. And from there, I just started looking into freshwater fishing. I probably had only gone freshwater fishing maybe 3 times in my life up until then. Yeah. So, I'm starting to understand, what is a Texas rig? Everything that I did was with a bottom sinker, and things like that. So I've honestly been on this journey for maybe 3 years. What really initiated the drive, though, my mentor passed away. And I decided to fish last season in honor of him. So any winnings that I would have won were to go to his family. And I met Carl, I think, on the second trip. and we've kind of been friends since then. So I'm fairly new to this. Carl, he's the hammer, he's the stick, but I just love it. I love the community. I love everything about it. I love your channel. I love what you do to create and equip, anglers, because I honestly, like, I didn't know about the warm water discharges up near Fort Washington and stuff until I watched your page. So thank you for what you do. But that's what it was for me. That frog bite, that topwater blow up, been hooked ever since.
We all have that thing that like just gets us hooked and it's burnt into the back of our brains forever. And Carl, before I send it back to you, Evan, so what from the saltwater thing then, because it is tidal, like did any of that play? Because it is hard in fishing when you don't have 4 or 5, 10, 15 years of experience chasing, the green ones. So when you got to do the largemouth tournaments, how much did that back history with understanding how tides work, did that give you any kind of edge?
My confidence went up when the tides start to move. That's when I felt more at home. High tide or slack tide, that still to this day, my confidence meter is fairly low. But I knew that the ecosystem comes alive when the tide is moving. And if anything, that was a bit of an advantage. Also, just we still focused on structure in saltwater, looking at the channel, understanding where it moves, looking for different troughs, ditches, things like that. So although I do prefer to power fish and fish shallow, knowing where a drop off is or understanding a long tapering point and being able to target that when the tide is moving with the right cover, I see similar correlations to saltwater fishing there.
That's freaking awesome. Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, I have some anglers that like their saltwater experience. Nolan Miner's a great example, but I don't think he's fully human. The saltwater stuff has helped him out a lot with his endeavors with the green ones. Now, Carl, like, what has been your back history with all this and just tournaments in general?
You talking about my backstory as far as how I got into fishing, or just the backstory behind Chesapeake Real Masters?
Yes, to both.
Oh gosh. How I got into fishing was really funny. I mean, I grew up in the mean streets of Landover and Capitol Heights, so we didn't have much water out there. So I didn't do much fishing unless my grandmother took us out during the summer or something, and we hooked the worm and put a sinker on and try to catch something. But I did have a cousin that was an avid angler. I didn't know how nice he was, but he was that nice way back in the 80s. I just had no idea. And I hadn't seen him in a while. And through the magic of Facebook, we connected. It was over 20 years we connected. And I think we went out on a Batasco. I told him about this spot. I was just starting to get back into fishing. I had a little Walmart bait caster, the little Zebco one. And I was slinging that thing out there in Patasco by the power plant. We were catching like little white perch and stuff on crankbaits. And I invited him out one day, and he came out there and he was like, yeah, okay, this is nice. Let me show you some real fishing. And he put a little bug in my ear about bass fishing and tournament fishing. And I didn't think I could ever do it. But he talked me into it. He coached me, and I fished my first bass tournament as a co-angler. Back then it was the ABA trail out of Smallwood.
Yep.
And I had a near-death experience in March. My boater, I'm still cool with this guy to this day, Ron Tooks. He took me out, man. I've never been out on a bass boat before. That was something. That was something, especially when it's windy on the Potomac. I was like, this can't be, like, you can't do this all the time. Your back is hurting. This is too many waves. This is just too scary. We're going 70 miles an hour down, and I'm looking, we're bouncing back and forth. My back is hurting. My arm is hurting because I'm gripping the side of the boat. So we finally get to the spot, and I didn't know what to throw. I'm just watching what he's doing. I'm just trying to learn. And he caught a couple of fish, and, I didn't catch anything. We moved around, and I think we went to Pomoki. There's a little pier back there, and I don't know how, but I threw like a 1/4 ounce rattle trap that my cousin told me to throw. It finally clicked to throw it, and I threw it, and I hooked into a 4.5 pounder.
Oh,
my first fish ever. I was hooked ever since then. I never caught another fish the rest of the day. Didn't care. I was on cloud 9. But after that, I had to have more, and I've been fishing.
Did you boat that one?
Did I do what?
Did you boat it, or did you just throw it?
He got the net for me.
Okay, good.
He got the net for me, and I said, "Great job on the net." He was like, "Don't ever tell me that again." That's like an insult. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's got to your first one being 4 pounds in a tournament. That is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah.
How did you make the segue then into the kayak world?
That's a good question. COVID hit, and actually before COVID, I had an inflatable. I had an inflatable. Yes, I had an Intex Incursion 5 or something. It was like I went online and I saw how guys were putting floors in them. They were taking like subfloors, like 1-inch subfloors, and putting carpet on them. And you can, they had seats and everything. It was all tricked out. I said, you know what? That's the cheapest way to get on the water for me, because I still wanted to get out and practice for these tournaments. And I went out. I think I paid like $200 for the boat. Went and bought the materials, built the floor, got a trolling motor for like $50. And I was out there. I was out there on the Potomac. Now, I didn't throw any treble hooks.
You got balls to go out there in an inflatable. I don't know.
I was out there and I was learning. I was soaking it up. And then I think when COVID hit, I knew I wanted to get a kayak, and I started looking into kayaks. And I got one right, I think 2020. I got a kayak and started going out. And
but why did you get the kayak?
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah, that would be a good story.
That I was supposed to fish a BFL. It was a 2-day. It was at the end of the season. I already had the kayak, but I wasn't fishing any tournaments with it. And they got that system where it's like a wait list, and I got bumped. I got bumped out of the tournament. I was 3rd on the list, and no other boater. So what I did was I went on. I said, I'm gonna fish somewhere Saturday. This happened on a Friday, and I found MAKBF. And I found they had a tournament going out on the Upper Bay, my favorite place to fish. I said, you know what? Let me see if I can get into this thing. And I just beat the deadline. The deadline was like midnight that day. Paid my membership, paid my whatever it was to get into the tournament, didn't care. Went out there and did everything wrong. Practiced CPR wrong, did everything you could possibly do wrong. But I met the nicest people out there. Some of the guys we're still friends with today. Josh Evans comes to mind. He was the first guy that I met when I pulled up to Perryville Community Park. It was pitch black, and these guys were going out in the darkness. I couldn't believe it, because you never launched when it was that dark in a bass boat.
That's insane.
I hope Thomas is still there, because this screen is black.
No, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still listening.
I can see him.
Damn, that's freaking crazy. What type of kayak then, Evan, are you running?
You can see him.
I want to make sure your audio, you have a clear place to cut. I can see Thomas. I run a video marketing business, so like I'm thinking about the edit as well. But yeah, I can see Thomas. You still can't see Thomas? Has him refresh for you?
You can, Carl. You can also just like refresh your tab. That's fine. And then because I'll edit in post production. It's also recording individually on both of your computers. So after we're done recording, it'll upload whatever video you have. So I'll have a clean copy.
Awesome. It's similar to Riverside.
Yeah. Okay. StreamYards is weird with the it'll only use Google Chrome, and that can be kind of spotty too, which is I don't know. It's kind of like why I like pre-recording. It just gives me so much more flexibility to make sure it's all like absolutely clean.
Definitely. It's a great practice.
What I didn't know you had a marketing company. That's pretty cool.
Yep, that's what I do full time.
How did you get into that?
I almost died 3 times. I went to Iceland. It's a long story. Kind of.
I can basically see I can't see you guys.
You almost die a lot.
That was Carl who almost died the other time. I had no near-death experiences in my story so far.
Okay, so you guys now both have them.
Yeah. But basically, I was working with a faith-based organization, filming stuff for first responders, and realized that you can solve a lot of problems through storytelling that go beyond the walls of like the church I was working with. And I fell in love with it and started seeing that people valued it. And after I got back from Iceland and nearly dying 3 times, sliding into the sea and getting blown off a cliff and all this other stuff, I was like, man, I've never felt more alive. I put in my 2 weeks notice and I haven't looked back. been like 5 years. So that's the shortest version of the story possible. So yeah.
And now I make digital content. Okay, yeah.
There we go. Right. So still solving. I was a cybersecurity analyst before that. So still solving problems, just not waking up at 2:00 in the morning to respond to firewall alerts, which I love because I have a 7-month-old, and I don't think that would work.
No, I know, but it's nice to get that itch scratched, so you're not like, you have the stories, because it's hard if you're fully remote to have like crazy stories. That's pretty cool though. To kind of segue back to the kayak thing, Evan, what type of kayak are you fishing out of right now?
Fishing out of a Bonafide SS107, and the way the Bonafide system works is the numbers are the length. So it's an 11-foot 7-inch. I'm sorry, a 10-foot 7-inch boat. I'm getting it set up for a motor. Last season, I paddled every tournament, and we fished like 13 tournaments. I was paddling like 14 to 15 miles a day. I wasn't going 70 miles per hour on a bass boat like Carl, but my back was still sore. It's a lot of lats, having the, and then boat control. It was a pain, but somehow I still finished in like the top 12%, I think, out of 90 anglers in the club. So
damn, that's awesome.
I counted last season being like my first tournament season ever to be a win, although I wasn't like, angler of the year, rookie of the year or whatever. But I'm out of a Bonafide. It's set up where you have pedal steering, foot controlled steering, and it's set up for either a bow or a stern mount motor. I'm going with a stern mount because I think which is also where Carl and I differ, which we'll get into. But I'm going with the stern mount. I think it just gives me a little bit better control and safety on the rivers that we fish. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I might go for a longer boat next season. We have a pretty sweet kayak sponsor, so I'll reach out to him soon.
The control part is so important. I'm in between kayaks right now. Really hoping I get a kayak here before our season starts, because it is like the paddling thing. It's not even about the speed. It's just to have your hands free to be able to fish. And coming from a boat to a kayak, that is frustrating as hell the first 2 years that I did it. Especially on tidal. There's constant current and stuff. And honestly, in tidal, it's a safety thing too.
Yep. Yeah. That's why we don't use, I don't think Carl uses an anchor. I don't use an anchor either.
Carl, kayak you fish out of, what brand is it again?
I'm fishing out of a New Canoe Unlimited.
New Canoe. Okay. Now, where do you like to put your motor on that?
I have the bow mount XI3 motor guide. And
why?
It's I could afford it, number one. Torpedo was a little pricey. But I think mainly because it was the style of fishing. It kind of suited what I like to do. It was more bass boat style fishing, having the trolling motor up front and being able to control, make little pinpoint adjustments. But now I have it to where it's hands free. It's, I steer the boat with my foot, 1 foot, and just turn the trolling motor on. And that way you can make more casts. And that's one of the tricks I learned by being out there, being more efficient with your time.
And I guess the plus of that too, depending on which brand you do get the spot lock capability, which does have its perks. Yep. I've seen a lot of guys on like scoping tournaments, like Anna Aquan Reservoir. That's kind of nice versus the Torpedo style. I will say where I think the Torpedo style is definitely the best is Susquehanna River, Shenandoah, that shallow rocky stuff where you're not going to snap the front of your boat off.
I made that mistake of going out there with the XI3, and I quickly learned going upstream, it's like you're going in slow motion. Literally, because that current is so fast. You need a Torpedo or a Newport vessel, something with some kick, and to get a little bit of protection with the rocks. If you got a rock guard or something like that on there, because the bow mount does not shine on the Susky at all.
It is a great way to lose some money. When we're looking at strategies when it comes to tidal fisheries in particular, the classic two examples really are the Iconelli. You're going to do the milk run the tide, and then you got the campers. And more you see just the camping winning. And when you look at kayak anglers in particular, and this is something that really blew my mind when I talked to Lowell Miner. I think it was like the 8th episode I did of the podcast, when he said he fished out of a boat, he tried the opens, and he went to the kayaks, and he said, like, until I got a kayak and live scope, I didn't appreciate how many fish you fished over. But when you were in a kayak and you had to, this is where you are, you can't run 500 points because you don't have a 250 on the back. You don't appreciate that there's a lot of fish you leave behind. And I'm segueing that to tidal fishing. You know, when you're fishing anywhere in the Chesapeake Bay Basin, how much does that really play in that you have to pick and camp and really work that tide for your 5 bites?
The last time I fished the Upper Bay, you can go offshore. That's one of the things I love to do. I love to fish the flats, but you got to have the right setup to get out there and deal with the boat wake that's going through the channel, and you know the weather that might kick up on you. You got to have the right setup. You don't want to go out there because you're going to get punished if you go out there with the wrong setup. So the first couple of years I fished it, I stayed around close to shore. You know, I didn't go far offshore at all. But when I got that new Canoe Unlimited and I got that XI3, I started to venture out. And what really forced me to because I had a smaller kayak at first. I had a 10.5 Johnny Boat Bass 100. And I had the motor that came with it. And it was not a tournament ready rig. It was just more like for fun fishing. Because I fished the Bassmaster when they came to the Upper Bay the first time, and Ike and Ellie won it. And we actually launched out of the same marina, Havre de Grace. And I was trying to get out to the flats. I just could not get out there with that boat that I had. And then I had a flat tire early in the morning, which really, that's how I started my day. I had everything packed. I come outside 3 o'clock in the morning to start my trip. My front tire is flat. Couldn't figure it out, man. So by the time I got up there, it was already late. It was like 9 o'clock. But it taught me that I needed a better kayak to get out there and really compete. Because, you know, you're going against guys with electronics. You know, they got the Hobies, they got the Torpedoes, they got all that stuff. You need a solid motor if you're going to go out there on the Upper Bay and really be serious.
That's great. Let's just keep it like at the Upper Bay for now. And since with your organization, and I guess we'll just say any tournaments, do you just commit to the flats when, I mean, you in a kayak being able to be mobile and dropping at different boat ramps? I mean, you got the Chester River, Sassafras, Gunpowder. I mean, do you ever make those gambles, or is it because of the stocking program they did and because all the tournaments that are in a boat related go out of one stupid boat ramp? Is the flats just the place you have to be to win?
It's the place that I love to fish, but you don't have to go there to win. I've seen guys win. I don't even know if I want to give that spot up.
Not the flats, basically.
I've seen guys win in bays. I've seen guys win around docks. It's different strategies. I've seen guys that camp. The guy that won the state championship, Allen, he camped up in the Northeast. I mean, there's different ways you can fish the Upper Bay.
Yeah, the Upper Bay is such a weird fishery to me. It's such a big, it's because I think it's funny because like when Bassmaster has an open there and they show basically the whole freaking bay. And it's like, dude, guys, that's such bullshit. It's 2 areas and it's small as hell. It is not that big. You get to fish. I mean, I'm thinking the last big event that was won outside of like the flats or the Northeast was probably Aaron Martin when he hauled ass to Middle River, I think. Like,
yes.
Yeah.
Middle River, quiet as kept. That area up in there out of Mariners Point and all that, got some fish in it.
Has it bounced back? Because there was a fish kill, correct?
They always have one over there. I don't know what's going on. They always have one. But from what I can tell, the last couple of years, they're back.
Okay, that's good. Evan, what are you saying?
So, last season, we fished the Upper Bay after Iconelli's tournament that Saturday. We fished that Sunday. And I was catching 3.5 pound bass consistently in the quarry back there off of Mariners Point. And man, we went out there. I literally caught, I don't think I stung the fish. I really don't. Because I fished maybe that Thursday before. I could barely buy a bite in that section of the Upper Bay. So I don't know when the fish kill happened. I don't know if it was just the fact that those guys knew about that spot and kind of beat it up in the tournament. But the Upper Bay that I knew in that section was not the same last season.
The Upper Bay is just it's a curious place because if you go out if you fish a bass boat tournament, you fish with some really good anglers, like some guys that are always in the money. They kind of give you the blueprint on what to do when you're out there, and it's just ditches. But some of them have ditches. They have a milk run of ditches that they'll run, and they just test the quality to see, okay, what's biting today. And if it's not what they're looking for, they keep moving until they get to the mother lode.
Yeah.
And I've seen that happen. With my own eyes, I've seen it happen. I've seen a guy that had like a so-so day, and then he got to his spot, and he just started cranking out 4s and 5s.
Remember, that was my rookie season last year as well. So I'm also learning that, the beauty of tidal fisheries when it comes to freshwater fish is that, where they move throughout the ecosystem changes drastically throughout the season. So I may have just been off, to be honest, because the Upper Bay is where I caught my PB. So I love the Upper Bay.
It's random too. You could throw up on the bank at a random twig and catch a 5. I've seen that happen twice, back-to-back weekends.
Goodness.
Yes.
Where would you rank? And we'll get into the other like fishing opportunities on the Chesapeake Bay, but compare and contrast like the Chesapeake to like the Potomac River. Personally, I think the Potomac is a better fishery because if you look at the weights, it takes 15 pounds like all the way down to like 30th place sometimes, or close to like 88 to 90 inches. But the Chesapeake, you'll have somebody crack a 30-pound bag, but then it's like in 15th place, somebody zeros. It's weird how top heavy a lot of the tournaments are on the Chesapeake comparative to the Potomac.
I would say the Potomac it's had its cycles. There's been years where it's kind of been down, but it's coming back recently. It's fishing right up there with the Upper Bay, like as far as like the quality of fish, like the size of fish, it's right there. And I think if I had to rate it, I caught my personal best on the Upper Bay. I caught a 6.5 pounder on the Upper Bay in the off the 95 bridge, out in some open water. I haven't caught a 6.5 pounder on the Potomac yet, but I've seen 7s come out of there at BFLs. I've seen it.
What place is easier to blank, the Chesapeake or the Potomac?
Oh my God. It depends on the time of the year. The later you get into the season, the easier it is to do. But the Upper Bay, if you don't know what you're doing, I think you can blank up there pretty easy. If you don't know where to go, you don't have that experience, I think you can blank up there pretty easy because there's so much water.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah.
I'm with Carl. But I think that's also what kind of invigorates me to want to study the Upper Bay more. I think I may regret this statement. This may not be a solid take, but I truly believe that if I can become confident on the Upper Bay this season, that will make me a better angler on the Potomac.
Yeah. That's a good take. Yeah.
Okay.
Upper Bay is I don't know why, but the fish are bigger. I don't know if it's because of the diversity of what they have to eat up there, but the fish just seem to be bigger up there, in my opinion. I know there's some big ones on the Potomac, and I love the Potomac, but I've caught the biggest ones on the Upper Bay.
No, I agree, and I've had I had Joe Love on the show last summer, who runs the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, and he talked about and his take is the problem with the Bay is it's almost like you had the same number of fish in the Potomac, but the Bay is like 3 times as big. And that's the issue a lot of times is there's just so much space and it doesn't equal the amount of fish per acreage. And he thought like the Potomac's just more fish dense per area, but the Chesapeake clearly, it's got big ones in there. And I also, my hot take here is they always have major tournaments out of one ramp. And if they would rotate that down to like Gunpowder and places like that, it would help restock. I think that's what happens with like the Middle River. He saw that in Nanjemoy back in the day, where one Skeet Reese won out in Nanjemoy, people pillaged that thing until there was nothing left. And if it's really a huge saltwater intrusion, you pull fish from Gunpowder or Sassafras up to East, I don't know if they're going back.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Mattawoman on the Potomac. I mean, all the major tournaments are right there at Smallwood.
Mhm.
That place is stocked with fish. I mean, it is literally stocked.
Literally. Every Saturday.
Man,
You don't even have to leave Mattawoman.
that's
There's
true.
been so many tournaments won in Mattawoman. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, the entire creek is hot. Christian Greg, how does it say? Go ahead.
Greco? I think it's Greco.
Yeah, he won it out of the back of Mattawoman in the Toyota Series, didn't he? Just punching.
Yeah, and this is something I want to bring up to you guys too, because I'm friends with like the McCluskeys and a couple of those guys that are really good with like Clearwater and Scope, and they hate the Potomac and really for that matter the Bay, because it's like you have to camp, and some of them, not McCluskey, think like, well, there's not as much skill in having to be like, I'm just going to sit in Mattawoman. Where I disagree with that is it's having the ability to know when to run 50 brush piles and when you have to camp. And the bigger skill in the camping is the psychological torment of seeing 50 people around you and being able to tune that shit out. That's hard. And a lot of people can't do that.
Yeah. When I was co-angling, some boaters really struggle with crowds. They really didn't want to be around crowds. I love crowds. I see crowds. I know there's fish around.
That's yes.
So I'm okay with that. Let me get my limit first, and then we can go explore this other stuff. But on the Potomac, like if you're in a basketball tournament, you're gonna have to venture into a community hole, try to get a limit or something like that, unless you found something special somewhere else. But
dude, you're 100% right. Like, yeah, and that's such a positive way to look at it that most people like bitch about is like, well, there's too many boats around me and they're catching fish. But the flip in your mindset means like, well, if they're catching fish, that means they're here. Don't leave.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. And if you got the magic bait, you know what they're biting that particular day, you can really clean up while everybody else is just kind of trying to figure out what's going on. You can really clean up. So I've seen that happen too.
Different fishery, but Scott Martin just did that on Okeechobee. It was a spot within the spot, and he threw something different than everybody else, and he caught a 90-pound bag.
And there's a reason those Florida guys come up here and clean house on the Potomac and the Upper Bay. I mean, if it's got grass, they just understand not only that you have to stay in one spot, but when I interviewed Greco on the show this fall, the way he can just look at a stupid grass clump and be like, this is hydrilla, this is milfoil, this is some Asian begarden shit, and know then which one he has to throw his bait in. And the fact that he said it was like a 50 to 80 yard stretch that he spent 8 hours on, I would have to take some kind of sedative to be able to sit that long and pick apart for 8 hours. That's insane. Couldn't do it.
It is a different mindset. There's certain parts of the Potomac where I don't really fish too well. And then there's other parts that I fish really well. And I can't put my finger on it. Like I will go back into the back of the chick. I don't care who I'm with. I can go back there 50 times. I will barely catch a fish. Barely. And everybody's catching around me. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm obviously not. I'm trying to do the same thing they're doing. It's still not working. But I go Belmont Bay and I can rack up. I can get a limit. I feel like I'm at home. But some places I don't know. It's just weird like that.
With the tournament trail being called the Chesapeake Reel Masters, what other rivers or areas? We mentioned the Eastern Shore, and I've had a couple of people talk about the Eastern Shore just for snakehead, but I never thought of it as like a bass thing. Or is it like the Sabine River where whoever catches 6 pounds basically wins? Like, what kind of fishery is on that side of the Chesapeake?
Evan, you want to take that? I don't want to get in trouble.
I'm coming out of my rookie season, so I'm not as well versed. But it's faster water, skinnier water, almost like a canal. It's been described as
canal.
Seriously, I mean, like you're in maybe a 10 to 20 yard stretch in width that's like 9 feet deep. And you have bluff banks on both sides. And every once in a while, you'll find a current break and that's where the fish stack up depending on the time of year. If it's hotter, they're in faster moving current. If it's colder, they're where it's a little bit slower. You have to try to just target those spots. That's what worked for me. But that a lot of mud rivers, not a lot of hard bottom. What else did I notice last season?
No grass.
No grass. The fish are often small.
You might get some lily
You
pads.
look so sad when you're saying this.
That was a great motivator for why we started this club. It was just, that was also the testimony of most of the anglers. That was a lot of the dock talk. It was like, man, I wish that we could be fishing in areas where there were larger fish on average.
But the counter to that, and Dimitri Karl, I want to get this point across, is like, if I said there's a Chesapeake Bay tournament trail, they would be like, so you're just fishing the same water. And what it sounds like is each tidal place is different, though. Even though they're tidal, they set up differently.
Yes.
Yeah, the Nanacoat, the Chop Tank, I don't know all the other ones back there, but the tide rips out of there. Wacomico. The tide rips out of there. I mean, it rips. And when it's out, it's all the way out. Like you're almost sitting on the bottom. Like you can see mud. Like places where there was lily pads and water, now it's just a mud bank with lily pads or whatever you call it. That's how fast it rips out of there. So seeing that for the first time, I didn't know exactly how to tackle that, because like if you got in there at low tide, it was almost like you really had nowhere to go other than the channel, just fishing the main channel. Then you got bass boats that are running through there. These channels aren't that wide. And you got 250, Mercs rolling through there. They're on plane. So you gotta keep your head on the swivel. But I think the habitat is intriguing. It looks very fishy.
Yeah.
But when you actually get in there and start trying to fish it, there was one tournament last year. I hate to mention this. I think it was my last tournament that season. I actually left. It was the kickoff for the NFL. I actually left at 10 o'clock in the morning. I said bye to everybody as I was going back to the ramp. I said, y'all have fun, man. I'm gone. Y'all have a good one. I think I caught like 10 shorts, and I couldn't take it anymore. I said, I'm gone. It was the last tournament I fished last year.
Yeah, that I stayed, and that tournament was won with a little over 60 inches for 5.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
But that's good. And this is something like with the clubs, and this is why I hate fishing. And it's, Bob, you run a great thing with the Potomac teams. I could not fish the tidal Potomac 38 times. I could not fish Fountainhead, even though Fountainhead has really good fish. Yeah. I got ADHD and I just get bored, and I like ones that throw. If you want to go for Angler of the Year, and I truly believe winning a tournament is hard, but you can luck into one. To be the guy that wins AOI, that's a hell of a thing. And I feel like if you want to be the AOI guy, you have to go to a place that if you catch, 12 inches for 5 fish, you won. You freaking earn that shit. And I like these schedules where you do mix up these tournaments because you got to work.
I can see that.
It's an argument to be made to that. And that's why we're unique in that aspect, because like I was telling Evan, we only sell lemon pepper chicken wings. That's all we do. It's the Upper Bay and Potomac. If you guys want to fish the other things, there's great trails out here. MAKBF, NAVKBA. I think I got that right.
NVKBA.
We got USA Bass and Jackson Kayak Trail. There's a lot of good trails out here that are hitting all the different flavors out there. All we're saying is the one flavor that we're hitting on, this is what we do. It's not complicated. This is what we do. We like tidal fisheries. We like the best bodies of water, competition-wise, that you can find in Maryland. And the other thing, too, I would say, I don't like to travel. I don't want to travel. I don't want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go drive 2.5 hours somewhere that I know I didn't practice because I couldn't get out there and try to compete, because I'm just donating at that point.
Mhm.
You know, yeah, you're getting to see different scenery and everything, but do you really have a shot at doing anything, cutting a check or anything? Not really. Not really. So that didn't really appeal to me. I'm getting older now. And you know, I like to an hour away from my house, Upper Bay, hour away from my house, Potomac.
Fishing the DMV has big plans for the future, but to get there, I need your help. For $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a jackhammer chatterbait, all weekend warriors will receive 5% off all of their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits. And we have a special announcement. We have a new sponsor of the Patreon program, Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll receive 10% off your orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community. You'll be in the running for weekly Patreon giveaways, our monthly photo contest that we do every single month, and of course, members only content and so much more. If you would like to help Fishing the DMV grow bigger and better every single month, to be part of a fantastic community that represents Virginia, Maryland, and the surrounding area, please check out the link down below. Thank you so much.
And I think that's important when we talk about this with kayak series. Example is like, so for, you know, NVKBA, they do the Potomac. It is just the Potomac. You can launch from wherever. They don't get any more granular than that. So when you say the Upper Bay tournament, would that be limited to just the Northeast River or Sassafras, or would that just each time be just the whole bay?
What our boundaries are, and we just posted this on our Facebook page, and it got a lot of action, a lot of traction. We go from the Northeast, where Anchor Marina is, all the way down to the north side of the Chesapeake Bay. Now, I don't know why guys want to go all the way down to Sandy Point and launch. That's your business if you want to do that. I won't be down there, but it's open water if you want to go. So that's where we're going. The only thing that's kind of off limits is around Aberdeen Proving Grounds, in Swan Creek. That's pretty much the only thing that's off limits. But there's some trails that just do the sassafras. They break up the Upper Bay. We might do that in the future. But you know, the guys voted on it, and this is what they wanted. So, you know, we're giving the anglers what they want.
I mean, with that said, and you guys kind of hinted at, but what was the hardest? What was the name of the hardest place you went last year, if you are allowed to say that?
I put it out of my memory bank so well I can't remember. I want to say Wacomico. I want to say Wacomico because I got a YouTube channel and I put most of my tournaments up on my page, so it's up there. Wacomico, the Nanacoats.
I think
it's all up there.
It's a tie between the Wacomico and the Chop Tank, for sure. And I do want to say this though. Last year was one of the best fishing experiences of my life. Although, you know, like I wasn't crazy about the bodies of water that we fished, I still enjoyed myself. I mean, it's nothing like being in nature, but although the fishing, it pushed me for sure. So I don't want to just seem like we're just bashing, you know, the trail that we fish or anything like that.
No.
But yeah.
No, it's just interesting because like I said before, you need to go to different fisheries to challenge. It's almost like with your brain, you know, if you don't learn anything new, you know, that's how Alzheimer's sets in. You have to challenge your body and your mind to stay healthy and young. And it's the same thing as an angler with your skills. You know, if you do just go to Mattawoman and throw a Cinco for 30 years, you're the guy that complains about live scope and still uses monofilament, you know, and okay, if that's what you want to do, good for you. But if you want to grow as an angler, yeah, sometimes you have to go to a place that kind of sucks and you got to figure things out and dig deep.
Yeah, and all things being said, that was the first time I'd ever been bass fishing on the eastern shore. So really? I learned a lot. I got to see, I covered all the ground. I got to see all the bodies of water up close. Yep. So that was good to see that. So I got that off my bucket list. But my heart is where the Potomac is in the Upper Bay. I love the other fisheries that we have around here too. I love Occoquan Reservoir, even though I struggle there. That's a beautiful place to fish. Triadelphia, all the other places that we have are nice, but Potomac, Upper Bay, that's it for me. And it changes all the time. It changes from week to week. It's not the same river that you fished last week. Those fish that you were on last week, they're probably gone, buddy. They probably moved. They might be a couple 100 yards down the bank, but they're not where you caught them at last week. So
100%.
that's what I love about both places. And it changes. The grass changes. You have to change your tactics on how you try to catch these fish, changing lures. I mean, it changes throughout the season. So it keeps you on your toes. It can definitely humble you if you don't do your homework.
No, 100%. When it comes to the Potomac, do you guys have it? Because I think the comment section will get me for this when this gets uploaded. But for MVKBA, I believe you can't go past the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, I think. So I guess my question is DC on or off limits?
It's off limits because we only go up to the south side of the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, and we go down to the 301 Bridge, I think they still call it. It might have another name, but that's as far as south that we go. So those are the two boundaries.
And my next question is why? Because no tournament, a lot of the trails I have on are like, no, we don't do DC. It's like, well, make that a separate tournament because there's a shit ton of water up there. I mean, you might get shots if you go the wrong place, but there's a lot of fish that have never seen a bait before.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. I just don't know where you would launch from. Gravely Point?
Reagan? Yeah, Gravely Point. Yeah. I probably would be it, I think.
Fletcher's, maybe?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know we go up there. We don't even really go up there for bass boat tournaments. I mean, we might go, the Spoils or Blue Plains or maybe 4 Mile Run. But you're right.
I would love to fish the wharf, honestly. I would love to fish up around there, around all those docks. I don't feel like they get pressured. I think to your point about bass tournaments, I think the issue is if you have a co-angler, that guy needs a DC license. And so it almost protects itself from fishing pressure.
Mm. Yeah, there's some giants sleeping in there.
There's smallmouth at Haynes Point.
Really?
Yes. I've caught smallmouth from the bank fishing with a spinnerbait. Smallmouth and largemouth.
Wow.
That's cool. That's really cool. I didn't know that. What's your biggest smallmouth ever?
That's a good one. I think I caught that up on the Conowingo. Conowingo is another great fishery. I think it's about maybe 3 pounds.
That's not bad. Was that below the Conowingo Dam or above it?
I want to say it's above it because it's where the line you can go into Maryland and Virginia. It's where like the Conowingo Bass Opens, they launch right there at the nuclear plant.
Okay.
You know what
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. That's above. That's cool. Dang, that's a really good one. Evan, what's your biggest PB, Smalley?
Still dreaming about it, Thomas. I've never caught a Smalley in my life. It's definitely on my bucket list. I've heard about them. I know they like to jump. I know they fight hard. Love current, but I've never hooked into one.
Oh, you poor man! Come on down here this spring or summer, and I can get you hooked up on one.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you have a guiding service, I'll come right out. Take care.
Thomas, what is your favorite place to fish in the DMV?
That's a good question.
Oh my God, I'd have to break it down by category of species. If we're talking smallmouth, God, if I want a place to wade, it'd probably be the Conicajig Creek. They're all about 2 pounds, but I can throw an ultralight in the back of my truck and I could be wading in 3 feet of water in the summertime. I'm just sticking about 30 or 40 smallmouth that are like 2 pounds or less. If I'm talking largemouth, I mean, I just fished the res and Jesus, I've never seen a tournament where my partner and I caught almost 26 pounds and we got 5th place. I mean, that's just
talking about Occoquan.
Yeah, I'm talking about Occoquan.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That place is a beast and a half. Like I did not appreciate when people said there's limits like that, when you have potential to hook an absolute, all of them are just solid fish. Smith is another place where if you want to learn how to throw a mag draft or a glide bait, you can just go with a mag to any dock and you will catch a fish.
Smith Mountain?
Yeah, Smith Mountain.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Those are good. The Potomac, I mean, I grew up fishing high school tournaments through college on the Potomac, so I'm spoiled in the sense because I'm bored with it. I know what to do, whether I can win there or not. I know what you got to do, and it's gotten to the point where it's boring. But for the best smallmouth river, it has to be the Susquehanna. Like that place is stupid. What it can turn out, absolutely stupid.
It is. That place is crazy. It's scary at the same time, though.
Oh yeah, it is. It's big. Like until you drive over it. I grew up literally on the shores of the Shenandoah, which you could throw a baseball across, and then you see that thing, and it looks like the Mississippi River. It's insane.
Wow.
And it moves.
Yeah, it moves.
Rocks everywhere.
Yeah, dude, it is gnarly, and it's one of those few places where I look at it and I'm like, I'm daunted by it. I fished Okeechobee before, and you think it's super big, but it fishes super small, and so you just know. Find big grass, find 3 boats. It's like Upper Bay or the Potomac, and you camp there, and that's fine. The Susky, it's like every rock looks like there should be a smallmouth under it. And so I get anxiety of like, I don't know where you would start in these tournaments there.
I gotta say, like the Susky, the places that scare me the most from a kayaking standpoint would be the Conowingo, the upper part above the dam, like where the rocks are, the boulders and all that. When the wind starts whipping up there, that place gets a little spooky.
Mm-hmm.
And the Susky, of course, the part in Pennsylvania, where's that? Where they got the baseball field in the island in the middle. It's right there in the city. I can't remember where. Jake Harshman fishes there all the time in his videos.
Calling him out.
I met him at a ramp up there.
I know what you're talking about. Jake, if you're not selling feet pics right now, please comment in the comment section down below where you're fishing. Yeah, I know.
That's become his brand. That's like the 3rd time I've heard about him in these feet photos. I don't know the guy. It's kind
of disturbing, but if he gets to retire from his day job, I guess you're welcome. Give me my check.
I didn't know about the feet thing. That's new.
Hey.
Be careful. If he has your number, he will send them to you.
Oh man.
So is it safe to wear open-toed sandals around him? Is that what you're saying? You got to wear tennis shoes or something like that? What is?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a fetish or just how he makes his bread, but it works for him. God love him. I mean, do you guys have a place outside of the Chesapeake that you really want to go or to like test your skills?
Oh yeah,
you can take that, Evan.
All right, so I've got a couple. I mean, they're more like destination type of trips. I would love to go to Okeechobee. I'd love to go to Chickamauga. Just to see, because you see. I would love to go to Fork, right? Like you see the quality of fish that come out of these fisheries, and I mean, it seems like there's just 10-pounders in Texas that just swim around community holes or whatever. But I mean, has anyone pulled? When was a 10-pounder came out of the Potomac or the Upper Bay?
Gee, I should have this memorized. Like 8 years ago, Woodrow Wilson Bridge, I think, Silver Buddy, something like that.
Okay,
it's been a while.
I can see that.
But, I mean, I just want to know what it feels like, So for me, that's really it. I mean, I'm just so content right now. Not even content. I'm currently still overwhelmed because I mean, where you were doing this in high school, I'm just getting started. So the Potomac and Upper Bay, my heart's full. But yeah, probably those destination spots. I'd love to catch a smallmouth. Maybe we can do a Fishing the DMV, smallmouth, derby or something.
I'll hook you up. I'll hook you up with some brown footballs. They're
That's
addicting. Carl, any places that are on your bucket list?
I would have to say Florida. I would have to say because when you watch Bassmasters, they're always catching big fish down there in Texas too. Like you said, Lake Fork, all that. I would love to have a chance to be able to catch something like that, a fish of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
But Thomas, you never told us. Do you only bass boat fish, or do you fish out of kayaks or inflatables?
No, I fished last year. I mean, I've had a kayak. I've had a Wilderness Radar 135. I think is the right acronym for it, but it's the Wilderness setup. And I had that for like 4 or 5 years, and then it is just dry rotted. It's dead. And I got a Torpedo, and so I was stupid. I bought a Torpedo, but now I don't have a kayak, so I just have a damn motor. But yeah, I fished a couple of kayak tournaments. I think it was a year and some change ago, No, actually, last year, where the hell was it? Hell, yeah, I won big fish last year. Actually,
You know,
the NVKBA.
This guy.
Yeah,
That's
he's
awesome.
hard as hell,
back, man. He's holding back.
He definitely
Dude,
is. Definitely is.
Yeah,
more
this
props
trophy
to you
on
guys.
standby too.
Yeah.
I just try how I rehearsed it. It's hard to go from boat to kayak 100%. I've had guys ask me a bunch like, would you sell your boat? And I'd be like, hell no, it's paid off. It's really nice to like go out there with a friend when it's cold out, especially. I know Jeff Little and Jake will go out there in -3 in some kind of like full body condom, but I'm like, dude, I am not doing that. I'm going to be in my boat with, I got a rope and I can have multiple layers. It's just more enjoyable.
Well, what do we have? What do we have to do to get you out here to fish a tournament with Chesapeake Reel Masters? I think
kayak would be very important.
Maybe we could talk to Chris over at Big Bass USA and hook him up with something and have him going out.
You at least get 10% off your next boat.
Yeah, something. Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the market because the faster I get one, the faster I can get back out there. Because I really wanted to fish NVKBA this year because they have 2 smallmouth events, and I'm really feeling like I have a chance to actually do AOI.
Yeah.
They have, and this was actually a question I did have for you guys. Their first event is at Lake Anna, which is going to be like a scoping Clearwater thing. If you guys did cut your teeth, and a lot of guys do, the classic river rat thing is for our title guys here. Does that, if you had to fish a tournament on the res or Lake Anna, you have any apprehension about that? Like, this is out of my comfort zone. Like, how confident are you when it comes to deeper water impoundments?
You want to take that, Evan?
I'll start off. I mean, it'll be short, so it'll be right back at you. But I think the majority of information that's on the internet that I've been able to find, and I'm putting myself in the position of, I guess, your average angler, is pretty much positioned towards man-made lakes and reservoirs. Mm-hmm. So I would say that I think I have a decent amount of like book knowledge on what to try, but I don't have the actual reps of actually being out there and actually executing it. So in my mind, I can chalk up a game plan that I'd be confident about, but the execution of it is where, it might get a little fuzzy. I mean, you had mentioned, I don't know if it was, you said something that reminded me of Randy Blockett earlier, and maybe it was the live scoping or, throwing a Cinco for 30 years.
Oh, but, yeah, that's Randy. That's Randy.
But yeah, so if I didn't have forward-facing sonar, I love Randy. I have some.
You're not gonna throw a trick worm in there or anything.
This is one of his jigs right here, So this is the Randy Blockett $10 old school jig. But yeah. So if I had to go out there and try to fish shallow for him, my confidence would be low, but I would still go for it. I would still try it for sure. But yeah, all I have is book information. How about you, Carl?
Well, I love shallow, dirty water with grass. I'm right at home. I fished a lot of Loch Raven, which is clear, is deep, and it has grass. But that can be a picky place too. I fished Smith Mountain. I had some success. I actually cut a check in a BFL on Smith Mountain.
Oh, right on.
So somebody gave me a magic bait right at the blast off. My cousin I was telling you about, Andre Wynn, he said, "Hey Carl, take some of these." I said, "All right." I wasn't on anything, and I started catching. So when it comes to like deep clear lakes, I do tend to struggle. I don't know if it's because the boater is kind of the way he's positioning the boat on the point. He really has the good water, and you're kind of like casting out into nothingness. The steep banks, where it drops 20 feet right off the bank. I don't know what to do with that. But when I went down to Tennessee, I had a guy, it was the same situation. They call them bluff walls or whatever. He would throw a jerkbait, and he started smashing them on a jerkbait. I'm like, how are you? I never threw a jerkbait before. He taught me how to throw a jerkbait, and I started catching. I felt like KVD. I didn't want to put it down, but I struggle with it. I struggle just the mental, just trying to figure out what lure to throw, what's happening under the water.
It's hard, and this is where I would tell a lot of anglers, like, you got to go fish. You got to go fish different water, and honestly, I don't know if it's the best thing. If you really want to go pro, I'm just talking for those people. I don't know how important it is to go fish the same tournament trail. Let's say it is like the Potomac teams or whatever, where you're fishing the same place 400 times, because you get that subconscious instinct for one thing, and then if you get out of that element, you're really screwed, because you need to be flexible to where if you see clear water, you don't pucker, and you at least have an idea of how to bob and weave. And great example from a professional standpoint, a lot of Southern guys sucked up at the St. Lawrence until they started to go there for like every single year for 20 years. But those first couple of years, it was 100% Northern guys in the top 20 until they got used to it. And a lot of anglers, a lot of great Potomac sticks, man, you pull them off the title and you put them in something clear. And you see this a lot when they try to go to like the Bass Opens and they go up north. They can't cut it because they just didn't get their reps in.
And you see the same thing when KVD came to the Potomac.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do nothing with that guy on Lake Michigan or whatever, but he came down here to the Potomac. He tried to use his same waypoints he did from a past tournament. It didn't work.
Nope. It didn't work.
Changes all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it. That's what I love about it. It changes all the time. You go to a reservoir, you can figure out how they're set up. You can just run that milk list all the way through the lake. But on the Potomac, that's a little bit harder to do. I mean, you can run a milk list, but you better be on top of it. You better practice, and you better know that they're there, and it has some inside information on what to throw when you get there. Because when I fish, I usually run a milk list. You know, you can't go that far in a kayak. So I'll try to pick an area where there's multiple types of cover, whether it's lily pads, got to have laydowns, or some grass. And I'll just rotate spots back and forth, back and forth. I catch some here, it dies down, I'll move to the next spot. If you can find a spot like that while you're out there fishing, where, I mean, you're not really camping, but you're just kind of protecting the area. You're just fishing through an area, certain types of cover, and you're catching fish every time through. That's when you're going to have a really good tournament. I feel that's when I've had my best tournaments. And you can have great tournaments too, just camping and waiting for the tide to change, and you can do that too.
And that's the powerful sauce for people that have never fished tide before. It's going to come in, it's going to go out, and there's going to be the first 20 minutes, before low tide, absolute low, and above absolute low is an example. Those are two kind of windows depending, each day changes, but like set your watch to it. Like they will bite and you'll know if there's fish there. That's not always the case on a lake. And I think that lake anglers, it creates this anxiety that you have to move to find them, versus you can sit in Pohick or Mattawoman or something, and in 8 hours, if I don't get one, there's something horrifically wrong, because I will hit the bite windows there.
Yeah. Other thing we're not talking about, blowout tides.
Yep.
You can. I've seen it in Belmont Bay, Occoquan, that part that goes into Belmont Bay. You can have you can go there the week before and just lights out, catching fish everywhere, off points, in the lily pads. And then the week of the tournament, the day of the tournament, there's a blowout tide.
Yeah.
All those areas sitting in a foot of water now. What are you going to do?
Mm-hmm.
You have to think. You have to recalibrate, whatever it is. Whatever you did in practice, throw it all out, and you got to fish all new water. And you got to figure it out. I had to do that last year. Practice was great, lights out. Came into the tournament, it was a blowout tide. Still caught 5, but you had to do it a different way. So that's what I love about
yes,
it.
100%. And the grass is a factor too. A lot of guys don't know how to fish grass, and it's weird. I say that because as a guy that grew up on the Potomac, it's weird that you don't know how to fish grass. But there are guys that just want to hit docks and brush piles, like you stated. But the Potomac gives you that ability to learn a technique that's so important. Because if you go up way north or way south, Florida or New York, dude, you better know how to fish grass a little bit, because you'll get your butt handed to you if you don't.
I had a guy, he was I guess he was a semi-pro or whatever. He fished in the big leagues, and he was telling me that because I never fished with a Cinco. I couldn't stand a Cinco. I didn't understand a Cinco. I thought it was the dumbest bait ever. I'm like, what is this? It has no movement, nothing. Why would a fish bite that? And I stayed away from it. And we were fishing one of Potomac up in Belmont Bay, community hole, bunch of boats around. And he was like, you know, whatever you do, if you're going to do this co-angler thing, he was like, throw a Cinco. He was like, they will bite a Cinco. He was like, just throw it out the back of the boat and drag it back. They will bite it. Mm-hmm. And I spent that tournament trying to learn that technique, and I did end up catching my first limit because I listened to him. And he said, throw it to Cinco. I learned it's a slow, tedious way to fish. But once you get into that zone, that's when the magic starts to happen. But it's hard to slow down and drag a Cinco in a tournament. But they do cash checks.
It's discipline.
They do cash checks.
Yeah.
No, yeah, dude, that just takes such discipline. And you mentioned the co-angler thing, and this is I guess a hot button issue now, and people want to always blame it. So, you know, I travel to the BFLs with a bunch of my friend and fellow YouTubers. They fish it. I don't donate my money to that stuff. I just go to drink and fish a little bit. And if you look at the forums of them trying to find co-angler links, and there's like no co-anglers, and everyone's like, oh, it's because of forward-facing sonar. Honestly, I'm like, it's expensive as hell, and all the major trails like Cat are doing solo now. The BFLs aren't.
ABA.
ABA, exactly. Yeah. Like, are we seeing the death of the co-angler where like in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, we're not going to have as many co-angler of like optional tours?
I kind of hate to see that if that's the case, because that's how I got started. And that's the entry point for a lot of new anglers. You know, everybody can't afford $100,000 bass boat or even a $25,000 bass boat and a truck to tow it and all the gear that you got to get to go with it. But they can put up a couple $100 and be a co-angler, you know, and learn from someone, you know, and that's how I got started. Now, I don't have anywhere to put a boat, so a boat was never my ambition. But I can put a kayak up under my deck, you know. So, and it's a lot cheaper than a boat. There's no insurance. There's no gas. I mean, once you pay for it, you got your motor and you got your sticker, you're good. You can go out anytime you want. So I love that flexibility about it. And I think I haven't really fished too many co-angler tournaments since I started doing kayaks. I did maybe 2 last year on the Conowingo. That's it. We finished first and second each tournament.
And
I think go for it.
Maybe some of those co-anglers are coming over to the kayak community, you know, because you're the captain of your own boat. You know, I mean, you get to dictate. Yeah, and you get to dictate where you go. You have to determine those changes your own. You know, it's all on you. So going back to my tennis background, you know, playing singles, it's you versus your opponent. There's nobody coaching you on the sideline. So that's why I enjoy it. And maybe that's what's happening. Maybe people feel empowered to try something new. And we'll see.
I agree with you 100% because they went up on their prices too.
Yes.
You know, their memberships went up. The whole linking, I never liked the whole linking aspect of it. I felt like if you paid, you should be able to fish. But to get on a waiting list with 30 other people and just hope and pray that you make it in, to me, that's for the birds. I don't have time for it.
It's frustrating because I've had a lot of success on the ABAs, and the one thing I like about that is like, okay, you don't have enough co-anglers, you just go out. Like you'll just go out alone. There's no big deal there. And that was for the Open Series, where like back in the day, they were still paying out $5,000 to the winner. The whole and Evan, kind of like you took the words right out of my mouth. I think kayaking is the death of the co-angler more and more because, and also the death of the boater. Because even though I've had people on here, we did basically Randy Blockett type sections of like kayaks are becoming $20,000, which at that point just buy an aluminum boat. But you get such a bang for your buck. I mean, I entered, it was like $60 for that MVKBA event, something around there. And you know, with the big fish and finishing in the top like 5, I mean, I won some decent chunk of change and I didn't have to put $100 of gas in my boat. I didn't have to idle all over the God's earth. Like it's a lot more bang for your buck in return rate.
Yeah, our tournaments are $45, $5 for the big bass fee, you pay $35 for your membership, but your membership gets you discounts at some of our sponsors. I mean, huge discounts, especially if you're looking to buy a kayak. Membership does have its perks. We have some great bait sponsors that are stepping in. I mean, we've been blessed in that way, but I fish co-angler events very rarely now. Very rarely. Very rarely do I fish them.
Do you think it's a pipe dream, or would they ever allow like a kayak tournament on Loch Raven?
That's a pipe dream. Definite pipe dream.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
I just want to know the weights. If you had a legit tournament, boat, kayak, don't care, to see what kind of weights or inches could be pulled out of that place.
All right. Truth be told, I might get stabbed for this, but you're really not supposed to have a tournament on should I even say that lake?
Is it one of the Baltimore reservoirs?
It's a
SSC.
WSSC sanctioned lake.
And you can say what it rhymes
it's
with.
in Laurel. It's in Howard County. There's tournaments to go out of there. But when I checked to see, could you do something? They were like, heck no. Heck no. Not if somebody's getting prize money. But there's tournaments that go off out of there, though.
That's interesting. I'll bring that up with, since I'm on the Black Bass Advisory Board for Maryland, let me bring that up with them, because Virginia did something last year where they said, like, department lakes, they won't let you bring fish in a live well, but if it's a catch, weigh, release tournament, they don't care. And so that opened up a ton of lakes that are under their jurisdiction to kayak tournaments, which is kind of brilliant. And that's something I think Mike Ortega did 2 years ago when they had their championship at Lake Frederick, which is about 300 acre electric motor only lake. But you couldn't have tournaments there before, but now it's like, if it's catch, photo, release, yeah, no problem. And it's like, why not do that, Maryland? Why not do that, Delaware, Pennsylvania? Like, that's such a great idea.
Huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
It is. And they're going to make money because you got to pay $5 for the permit. You got to have a license. They're bringing money to that particular venue. They're spending money at the gas station and the shops and all that kind of stuff too. So I don't understand why they don't.
Unless you grew up on those fisheries as well, more than likely you're going to practice a few days before the tournament. So it's not just like a one-off expense as well. So if I'm going to spend more than $20 somewhere where it's a $7 membership, I'm probably just going to get the $70 membership.
Some of these places, furthermore. Oh, I'm sorry, Evan.
No, that was it.
Some of these places like Loch Raven, you can rent a John boat. So why can't you bring your own boat? Or kayak, I should say.
I guess John boats stay there.
Photo, catch, release. Liberty.
Pretty Boy.
Yeah, Pretty Boys is another one. And I'm trying to bring the size up here and make sure I got this right. Loch Raven. I think it's Loch Raven actually. How many acres is Loch Raven? Yeah, so Loch Raven is over 1,000. Like that's more than enough. I mean, a place like Loch Raven or Liberty's 3,000. I would pay $1,000 a year for a parking permit for my bass boat. I'm not going to leave it there, but like, you give us the number, Baltimore, and we'll let you know if that works or not. Because I think there's a lot of guys who be like, okay, I could drive to Smith Mountain Lake, or I live in Maryland. I could just pay this fee, and it's basically the same as the gas to Smith. Yeah. Like, they could be making so much more money and that's what's so goofy about it. And this is why I don't understand. It's not even like there's a bunch of houses on it and it's private. It's just literally a vacuum sealed lake that no one enjoys. It's so weird.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And the smallmouth state record came out of one of those stupid lakes. Wow. So there's fish in them.
Yeah.
There's some big fish in Liberty. There's some big fish in Loch Raven. There's some big ones in there.
And with that said, with your tournament season coming up, if people wanted to get involved in it, how do they sign up? Do they have to be a Maryland resident? Can they come from anywhere? Do you have like a deadline? How does all that work?
Take it away, Evan.
All information is made available at our website, which is crmkbf.com. And we also have our Facebook page, which is the Chesapeake Real Masters Kayak Fishing Club. So I would go to our website. Yeah, crmkbf.com.
KBF, just like your hat says.
There it is. And that'll take care of all of your questions. That gives you the links to our Tourney X web pages for each individual event. It also allows you to become a member by just clicking join now at the multiple locations where you can do that on the website. And if you'd like to support us with merch, you can do that as well.
That's awesome. Karl, any closing thoughts from you before I turn it back to Evan?
First and foremost, I just want to thank you for letting us come on, inviting us on your show. I think you're doing a tremendous job.
Yeah.
I've seen you down at the Richmond show. Didn't know who you were, but I kept seeing your videos. I'm like, who is this guy? I was looking for him. I didn't see him down there. But now, getting a chance to talk with you, I really want to go fishing with you. I think Evan and I, we should have arranged that to get out there and go fishing with you. Because you seem like a really cool guy, man. You got a really cool podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I could get you guys on, and we'll definitely have some of your tournament winners on as well as your events start getting put in the books for 2024. We'll get them on to help promote your organization and give them a platform if they're interested.
Cool. We appreciate that, man. Bring your Cinco, though. Bring your Cinco.
I'll bring my Cinco and a few other things as well. And I guess the last closing thought for both of you is Evan, what are your goals this year fishing wise?
Man, my goals this year fishing wise, that's a great question. So I have a 7-month-old, and I am notorious for covering water way too slow. I think I'd like to be a more efficient angler. I think that's everybody's dream, but now that I'm going to have a motored boat, I think I would like to, one, feel more confident covering water faster, determine what lures I want to go with, whether it's like jabberjaw, lipless, chatterbait. Everybody throws those things. But more confident with becoming more efficient. I think I would like to teach at least 10 anglers how to kayak fish. That's a goal that I have. Like a big part of our club is really just promoting the growth of the sport. And I think the best way that you can do that, I know it's an old adage, it's kind of corny, but it's literally teaching someone how to fish instead of just giving them the fish themselves. So if I could teach 10 anglers how to fish, get them away from blue light, and being away from screens all day, being out in nature, that would definitely make my heart full. And last but not least, I would like to walk away with a check from one of our tournaments. That would be my first.
I feel like that should be the first priority, but
I've always put the anglers first. Like we were even contemplating not fishing any of our tournaments this year, just because we didn't want there to be any controversy about like us knowing people's waypoints and stuff like that. Just making sure the integrity is there. But if it's not one of ours, I want to win at least one tournament. That would be a huge success for me. I've never done that before. Come close.
it is funny you mentioned that about the waypoints. Like the people that bitch about that are the same ones that have Siri and a smartwatch in their house. It's like you guys are a little squirrely there with what you deem is important for the state to know.
Mm. Yeah,
and you can have forward-facing sonar in our tournaments.
That's true.
You can. I don't have it, but it's legal in our tournaments.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, that's weird that some people are cracking. I mean, yeah, to each their own. Like, yeah, if you want to do that 100%, and especially if you're a new club and that's like where you want to go, and you're seeing a lot of older clubs though making those decisions on that, which is I don't know. Like, I don't know. I got to think about that though and do an episode on that, because I guess in one sense, yes, but the problem is in 10 to 15 years when the cost of forward-facing sonar is going to come down because that's how technology works, it's going to be everywhere. So would that kind of shoot your club in the foot where everyone has it? What are you going to do? Take it off? Like, I don't know. That's an interesting thing.
Look at the Elite Series now. I just saw a YouTube video with Chris Zaldane, and he went through all the Elite Series guys, their boats, and the setups and how much they paid. Brian Smith, he's a local guy. He had 4 graphs above his steering wheel.
Yeah, that's a lot of drug money he sold to get that. That thing looks stupid. It looked cartoonish.
He didn't even make the cut. He didn't even
wow.
Make the cut. So I look at it this way. You know, everybody has it. Everybody's armed with it out there on that level. So it's just how proficient are you with it, and does the lake lend itself to really excel with it?
Yeah.
Hey, Thomas, question.
Yeah.
Are you all seeing a surge in shallow water fishing or power fishing now that more people are using forward-facing sonar? Are like the fish catching on and moving up to the bank more?
Yeah, there's definitely a case to be made there. I think it's very prevalent on very forward-facing sonar heavy lakes, like Smith Mountain Lake is a great example of that, where there's a lot of people that can beam because there's big tournaments. Occoquan Reservoir is another one where it is a very good forward-facing sonar lake, but not everyone has it. It's a very mixed bag, so you don't have that pressure offshore yet from everyone being there. If you go like again towards like a Smith, though, where you have a bunch of big tournaments, guys that do have $100,000 bass boats, you have a bunch of big tournaments that's happening. Lake Anna, the same thing. We're in such a weird place because you can scope in tidal 100%. You can. People do that, but it's never going to be the same as a Kentucky Lake type of scope deal. It's not going to be like that big of an advantage, honestly. And you know, and I've said this a bunch. Like I've had few tournaments. I'm over 14 months with forward-facing sonar. I have a bunch of friends that have it. The biggest thing about it is it's not a miracle drug necessarily, like you see on the elites, where you just basically stick it over a fish's head and you catch them. It's if you have half a brain and you can make adjustments, you can do it so much faster because you can watch the fish look at your jerk bait and you realize he doesn't want to change colors. So instead of you hitting that 50 points with that color, you have the ability to make quicker decisions. Or you pan around, you're like, there's no bait here, I'm gone. Your decision making is so much quicker. And I've seen that when I went in Pohick once and I turned it on because I was like, I wasn't catching anything. I scoped around, I was like, there's no bait. Everything looks dead under the water. And I never scoped one, but I just quickly, it kind of like, I wasn't getting a bite and I turned around, I was like, yeah, there's no life here. I don't see a gizzard shad. I don't see minnows. I don't see shit. So it's that ability to quickly process information. And I think a lot of these older guys on the tour, it's almost like sight fishing the whole time. And you chase every blimp as soon as you get it. It's like crack. It's so much fun to stare at the screen. The guys that are good at it know how to stop immediately. And I was out with McCluskey, who we call like McJesus on the res. He's been fishing scopes since they come out. And he'll look at that thing and within 5 seconds he'll be like, that fish is 6.5 pounds. It's got 6 stripes on its left side and it's not going to eat this lure. We move on. I would have spent an hour on that fish, but he understands fish behavior so well now. He knows when to stop.
Wow.
That is what's so fascinating that they don't tell you about those pros is they can look and tell you fish behavior. And that's what's becoming down to is can you distinguish how the fish react quickly enough to make that adjustment and not get stuck in the weeds.
Yeah. And everybody doesn't have the same decision-making process.
Yep.
Because if they did, they would all be in first place on the Elite Series. I mean, they all have the same equipment. So,
preach 100%
better than others.
And I think with the glides, like it's been interesting to see that evolution where they're using them for more scope now, but at the smaller levels, like down below the elites, it is an equalizer when it comes to the scope stuff because, you know, I mean, like the tournament on, you know, was it 48 hours ago? We were just bank beating. Like I had a trolling motor. I didn't have a 9.9 outboard. I had a 225. They would not let me fire that thing up in Occoquan Reservoir. So I just had to like trolling motor around the damn place. And so we didn't have any waypoints. So we just hit the bank with big glide baits and we got our 5 bites or 6 bites. Guess what? Like that's an equalizer now. If you don't have scope, learn how to throw a mag draft or a glide bait and you can run into a kicker pretty much anywhere with it. You just have to have the balls to throw something that's the size of a trout and you will get like 4 bites, but it will be your kicker.
Yeah.
You have to have that skill to be able to read the water, read the situation, have that history to go back to when you find yourself in similar situations, rather than just looking at a screen all day and just because I looked at that screen, I got 3 of my buddies got it. And I've been out on the boat with them with it. I don't understand it. It's like looking at, you know, how you go to the doctor's office with your wife and they're doing the sonogram.
Yep.
I can't tell that's a boy. I don't know what that is. How are you seeing this? That's how I look at sonar. I can't really read it that well.
The thing that's helped me the most is to always keep a crappie rod with me. I started doing that late last year and it just changed everything. And actually opened the mind up to some guys that are really good with scope, because big crappie and perch look a lot like bass. And if you keep crappie jigs in your boat, I mean, or your kayak, it doesn't look manly, but you'll see a school throw to it, and then you'll hook one, you'll find out what it is, and it'll help you with that decision-making process. Because I mean, I saw big schools that ended up being like 8-inch bass, just all schooling together. And I threw a little, like a trout magnet in there, and I caught 2 of them. They're little bass. Like, okay, cool. So what I'm seeing now in this area is probably bass, or it's a crappie or white perch. And it just helps get you conditioned. And it's fun too. Cause that's the one thing about scope. Crappie fishing, perch fishing is like so much fun in colder weather. Now that I got that on the boat.
Right. That's awesome.
When you were on the res, you didn't have the scope with you. Is that?
I had the scope with me, but it was worthless. It was because of the time of year those fish were pushing shallow. And I have no waypoints or anything for this place. I didn't practice. We rolled out of bed and went and fished this thing. And so I could scope and try to go hunt a couple, but they were moving shallow. And we thought, and based on my partner Phil, was like, if we have any chance in hell, you're going to have to just keep throwing Hail Marys to the end zone and throw big baits. And that's what we did. We moved based on what I saw, though. In the first cove we were in, we saw a lot of bait activity. So we stayed there a little bit longer. I worked a big 7.5-inch swim jig in the back of these guts, because there's big gizzard shad in there, like massive, to catch a bunch of males. And then we started to move out. And then when the sun came out, you saw on the scope, everything got compressed immediately when that sun pulled out. It was warm on Sunday. And again, never caught a fish off scope, but I watched the information of everything was up in the water column when the sun was behind the clouds. But as soon as it got hot and the sun came out, everything compressed down. So we had to make an adjustment. And that's where I say, like, the scope either is going to be in tournaments, is going to be a primary or secondary factor. Secondary factor is I never caught a fish off scope, but it influenced my decisions. Like, we got to make an adjustment because the fishing has changed, and the scope is proving that, not just what I'm thinking, but what I'm seeing.
What was the adjustment?
The adjustment really was with the creek that we were in, and we had the sun out. Let me rephrase that. In the beginning, it was super cloudy, and it was, of course, it's the res, so it's muddy. You could throw a pearl white, and and by the way, everyone, we live stream this, so it's available there if you want to go see it. But you could catch, it's kind of grainy, but it was fun. Basically, as the day wore on, they weren't going to track a pearl white bait anymore. And so we were throwing big white glide baits. One of the kickers we had, he was talking to me, and he worked this bait in, did a figure 8, left it on the surface to talk to me. And a 5.5 pounder blew it out of the water next to the boat, and he swung it in. I mean, he saw on the camera, it just blew this thing right out of the water next to the boat. Well, now he was later in the day, he had a almost 9.5 follow it all the way back to the boat and turn off of it. And when we panned around, all the fish, everything was compressed and the sun was out. And so what we realized is they weren't going to chase that white soul, that halo anymore, because the sun was out and everything was starting to clean up. So he switched to a damn near perfect replica of a gizzard shad. And then he was able to catch 3 more as the day went down. But he also had to fish that thing way deeper. It wasn't on the surface anymore. It was a little bit lower in the water column. And so, and that was because I like to think it's because the scope of knowing, like, he's not on the white anymore because we saw that, but also nothing's up in the column anymore. Everything's compressed because of that sun. And you can take that information and kind of formulate a game plan based on that.
Nice.
So that's where I went wrong. I fished that place about 3 times. I still don't have any waypoints, Thomas.
Dude, it's funny, and you know, and this will be the last anecdotal thing with that is we did I wanted to try to live stream it, and we did the best we could. And there were so many people telling us, go here, go there. And we're like, we have no experience. We're just going to go fish. And they said, like, this bank was shit. And then we catch 2 off of it. You know, go fish this side, and we catch nothing off of it because we had no history. We were just rolling out of bed and fishing, and you fish what looks good and what the fish are telling you. And there's something powerful about being able to switch off in your brain not to fish history. And if I could figure out when to fish history and when not to, I feel like I'd be so much more dangerous.
it's a heat check though. You got to check it though. It's like you got to see if the stove's still hot. You know, you got
Yeah.
No, 100%. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. Evan, Karl, I really appreciate it. We are definitely going to have you back on, and then we will have your winners on the tournaments if they would like to come on. Guys, as always, link in the episode description to everything that we talked about today. If you like, go check us out on Patreon. Our goal is to start a nonprofit to help supplementally stock all of our fisheries and help do some boat ramp restorations, because there's a lot of shitty boat ramps in Virginia and Maryland that need some loving. And so that's something I really want to kind of help with. Like and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.